I'm Michelle Davis. I'm a senior writer with Education Week Digital Directions, and I write about technology. I'm really excited to be sitting here with Gail Pletnick, the superintendent of Arizona's Dysart Unified School District, and Dan Walker, the assistant superintendent for Alaska's Lower Kuskokwim. Did I say that right?
You got it.
I got it. All right. And what I think is so interesting is obviously the two of these people come from very different districts, very different climate, very different geography, and different school student makeup. But they're both using technology to accomplish a lot of goals within their district, and in some ways using technology in a similar way. So I want to start by just asking each of you to briefly sort of sketch out a picture of what your district looks like so everybody can kind of get an idea. I want to start with Dan, and just sort of tell us a little bit about what your district's like.
Sure. Our district is on the far west coast of Alaska, comprises 27 schools in 23 communities over an area the size of the state of Ohio. We have about 4,100 students in those schools. Our schools range in size from the very small of about 15 kids through K through 12 to our largest village school of 250 kids K-12. In our hub community of Bethel, there's about 6,000 people, and about a third of our students reside there, and the largest school there is the regional high school, and it's about 550 kids. So a lot of logistics and management of that, the distance learning network in particular that goes into that.
Great. Gail, tell us a little bit about your district.
Dysart is currently about 25,000 students.
A little bit bigger.
A little. However, it grew almost overnight. In 2000, we had a little over 5,000 students. So in a very short period of time, we were adding a number of buildings and welcoming a lot of students. At one point, we had 28% growth in 1 year, 3,000 new students, and opened 3 buildings in that 1 year, built and opened 3 buildings. So it rapidly changed. We are a district that has about 49% free and reduced lunch. This area is located outside of Phoenix. It is in the northwest corner. And a lot of our parents moved there because, quite frankly, as housing started to increase in price, this was an area where they could get a house at a reasonable price. So we have a lot of blue-collar workers and a lot of parents that have to travel for work. When the economy changed, we felt that immediately. However, we still continue to grow with 1 to 2% growth. However, our finances changed. Arizona is known as a state that has a really low amount per pupil spending. And when we had the economic shift, we ended up in a 5-year period having to cut $54 million from an already very tight budget. So that meant having to do things very differently. At the same time, because the district had gone through such rapid growth, there was a lot of attention to facilities, not necessarily a lot of attention to academics, and we had to shift that if we wanted our students to be successful. So it really gave us a wonderful opportunity to almost start with a blank slate and start designing and doing things differently.
Great. Well, Dan, when I spoke to you, you told me a little bit about your background in the district. You were actually teaching at one of these very remote schools for many, many years. So you really understood what the students in some of these very cut-off rural schools are facing. I understand some of the schools, you really can't travel in and out very easily, especially not by car.
Yeah, well, there are no roads. You have to fly in and fly out.
Right.
And once you fly into the hub community, then there are small bush planes that take you out to our communities. And our kids really are cut off in a lot of ways. And once we got internet access, that really changed everything for us. It broke down walls and barriers and gave our kids access to things that, quite frankly, none of them had seen before, other than maybe in books in a library. And so I saw that as a mechanism, and technology as a mechanism for us to break down those barriers and give our kids access to some of the experiences and the opportunities that kids everywhere else would have had. And we've worked now for the last decade or so trying to expand those opportunities through the use of technology.
Yeah, explain the video conferencing setup
Sure.
that you have and sort of how you bring teachers and courses to students in these schools where they wouldn't normally have enough teachers to teach all these different subjects.
So you can imagine in schools that range from 15 to 250, it's very hard to have a highly qualified teacher in every subject area. And so we wanted to change that paradigm, and the way we started out was through a two-way interactive video conference system. In the early days, that was satellite-based, and anyone who has experienced satellite internet knows that there's a lot of latency issues. And over time, we really started building a strong partnership with our telecoms and really finding ways to expand that. Currently, we have teaching studios in our central office, and we have highly qualified teachers there. We have two interactive video conference systems in each of our schools. We can run probably 65 to 70 simultaneous conferences. And our teaching studios they start at about 8 to 8:15 in the morning, and they go till the end of the school day. They're in use just about all day long. And so that is really, as we started out with, the math, the science, those areas that really hard to get highly qualified teachers in all of our schools, we've now expanded that into robotics. We have a middle school and a high school robotics class that's taught over two-way video. We have a cooperating teacher in our remote school and a teacher in a teaching studio, and they work cooperatively. We provide all the parts and materials for them to build their robots, and they've just really taken off with that. This last week we had one of our teams that competed in what they call the super region in Sacramento, and so if you can imagine, these are kids who were from numerous villages in our communities that came together part of the time face-to-face, but part of the time over a video conference, and literally they would be sketching out engineering drawings. They would take a picture with their iPod or their smartphone and send it to one of their, whoever their teammate was who actually had the robot, said, oh yeah, I can do that, and they would change the parts or re-engineer a part. So it's people said, that you're going to have a hard time doing that. We had people who said, yeah, it's not the same. But if you think outside the box and you look at the opportunities that are there through technology, we I think have done a great job of really finding ways to get kids that access that they normally wouldn't have had.
Well, that's one thing that I think is interesting, is that you're using technology to bring these courses and these opportunities to kids, and you're also using technology to sort of personalize the learning experience for students. I know you have the Move On When Ready program, and talk a little bit about what that is and how technology plays a role with that.
One of the things that when we began to think about, so how do we prepare students to be college and career ready in the 21st century? As I said, when I came on board, one of the tasks was we need to really pay attention to academics, raise the rigor, make certain students are successful. But we needed to define that differently. It wasn't about raising test scores, because if we wanted students to be ready for that global economy, did it really mean what their score was in our state assessment, or was it more important that they could critically think, that they could plan a project, that they could speak 3 languages? So we knew we had to think about time differently, and one of the things we realized is that right now in education, even though we know before students enter into a school, they don't all necessarily walk at the same time. They don't talk at the same time. There's that span. Their interests aren't the same. Some children you could put on Santa's lap and they giggle, others will scream for whatever period of time. But as soon as they enter into our formal education system, then we expect that within 180 days, they're all going to learn the same thing within that set number of hours that we've set with those courses, that this is how we could define success for them. We had to find a different way to approach that. We have to tap into their interests, and if we're doing that, we're personalizing the education, not just individualizing. Yes, if students need that support to be successful, so whether that is some remediation, some interventions, or challenges, if they're ready for that, we have to provide that. But we also have to know what they're passionate about. We have a room full of passionate people. That's why they're able to really think outside the box, be innovative and creative. We owe that to our students too. So in Arizona, they passed legislation that said students could move on when ready, and allowed schools then to start building processes and supports that would allow students to get involved in a curriculum framework. We use Cambridge, in which, again, their courses are all with that level of relevance and critical thinking and problem solving. So indeed, they're held accountable to all the same standards, but really within a framework that allows them to explore and expand. Then they can sit for exit exams, and if students in their sophomore year are able to pass those exit exams, it really indicates they're ready for that next level of academic challenge. It doesn't mean that they necessarily need to be walking into a university class. It means that we need to provide other pathways that let them take on challenges that perhaps we can't offer in our traditional schools. So we've worked with our community colleges, and our students will be able to take those online courses within our schools, still participate in student council, still participate in organizations that they really want to be connected to. So we're not asking, again, thinking about the whole child, we're not asking them to be wise and mature beyond their age, but really to have the opportunity to tap into all of their interests and be successful and move on. So they can walk across our stage with both an associate's degree as well as their diploma, and leave the school ready to move on to whatever is next for them.
That's great. So a student really could be on your campus participating in sports and other activities, but earning college credits.
Correct. And they can either do that at the community college and or within the school setting. We've worked with our community colleges so that we can offer them flipped, blended, online, so that they don't have to really worry about being in two different places.
Right. Now, I know both of you don't have a lot of money in your district. You're both faced with budget issues. And I want to ask Dan, how did you set up this internet infrastructure, your broadband, all of that, with a limited budget?
Well, first of all, without the resources from E-rate, it wouldn't be possible. And secondly, creating a strong partnership with the telecommunications provider. We have for that large area, that wide area network, we have an IT staff of 6 people.
Wow.
But through that partnership with our telecommunications provider, we are able to, we have very, very little downtime. I would say we're 99+% up all of the time. And that's, if you think of the logistics of that, when you have 65 or 70 endpoints, cameras that are out there in those remote villages, and your internet pipe is a microwave shot from our hub community out to one of the remote villages, and then think of the extreme weather that goes along with that. That is an incredible feat to have that uptime, and so it wouldn't happen without a telecommunications provider that is really a partner, and it wouldn't happen without the resources from E-rate, and it wouldn't happen without a commitment from our school board that we see that our kids, we have to find ways to break down those barriers. And as much as we don't want to say technology maybe as an equalizer. It frankly has been an equalizer for our kids. They now have opportunities they would never have had without that access. And when you think of the remoteness of that, it's just huge what they're able to access now through that.
And I think
learning
you had
network.
mentioned to me, what does your sort of putting all this infrastructure and keeping it running, what does that cost a year, and what does the district pay?
Yeah, so our internet costs a year are in the range of about $22 million. We have about 87% of that is paid through E-rate. Most of our village schools are approaching 100% free and reduced, and then our hub community of Bethel, where there's more professionals in the community, the free and reduced rate is a little bit lower, but it's still above 70%. So without that E-rate subsidy, it wouldn't be possible. That being said, out of about an $82 million budget, we subsidize our internet to the tune of about $3 million a year out of our regular, what we call foundation funds.
Now, Gail, I know you have a BYOD, Bring Your Own Device program. Is one reason because you don't have a lot of funds to go out and buy devices for all the students? And I know you had mentioned that a lot of people said, oh, that's not going to work, there's going to be so many problems. Talk to me a little bit about how you implemented that and how it's been successful.
And indeed, when we saw that, again, the funding that we were going to be receiving for capital was going to be really slashed to almost a quarter of what we used to receive, we had to think outside the box again and do things differently. And there was a lot of concern, including from leadership within the district and our board, about all the things that might happen if we kind of open the door and allow students to bring those devices. But we talked about the fact whether we said they could or they couldn't, they were. And so instead of having them actually be utilizing those under the desk, let's have them on top of the desk and be able to have access to it. But it did mean a lot of training, so we didn't take that lightly. It really meant looking at our policies and our procedures and making certain that we didn't have things that really were in conflict with each other, and there were some of those pieces. It meant working with our teachers, not only in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom, because they had to feel comfortable and confident with the use of this variety of technology coming in, and then continue to provide support. We have what we call innovation ambassadors. Those are teachers that are in our classrooms teaching, but also have that passion for looking at technology as a tool. They're there every day supporting other teachers who want to, again, find those ways to be successful in utilizing it. So it's building that capacity, making certain that your processes are in place so they can support that, and then educating not only our teachers and our students, but our parents. We have to spend a lot of time really sharing with them what are the advantages and what are some of the things that you can do to help us to make sure that this is successful. And so we've been doing this for a number of years now, and all of those horrible, terrible things that people thought were going to happen haven't happened yet, and I should knock on wood because we never know what could happen the next day, but it's worth the chance in order to make certain that students have access to what they need. We have a video that we've been sharing with our community where a student has 3 devices out. One is one that we have and are able to provide in our classroom, but the other 2 she brought from home. And she can tell you exactly why she's using all 3 and how she's using it to get the information and accomplish what she wants. And that's what happens naturally for our students. And so we've got to tap into what is natural for them and really the resources that they can bring to school.
Well, and just to elaborate, you had mentioned to me that you keep in mind some of the equity issues, and so that when you're building out your Wi-Fi, you're making sure that, just talk a little bit about that.
One of the things that happened as we allowed students to bring their own devices is we didn't have enough connectivity. So we had to deal with the infrastructure. So more points for Wi-Fi, broader broadband, all of those kinds of things were challenges that we had, but another opportunity. because we knew that some of our students didn't have that access at home. And so as we began to expand that, we put a perimeter around all of our buildings so that after school, if students want to come, we may not have our campuses open, wide open, 24/7, but they can sit outside those buildings and actually get access to the Wi-Fi. The other thing we've done is to work with some of our providers and try to find ways to be able to provide that connectivity at a low cost. We have some veterans organizations that have been taking in computers and refurbishing them and giving them out to our students most in need. So it really is about our finding ways to expand capacity, but also looking into our community to support that so we have equity.
Just in the last minute or so, I want to touch on something that I think is interesting for both of you. You're both dealing with students who maybe English is not their first language. You're dealing with students who speak the Alaskan language of Yupik, is that right?
Yes.
And I assume you have quite a few students who speak Spanish. Talk a little bit about how technology is assisting in both of those circumstances.
Sure. Well, it is the ELL issue for us is the number one issue that we face. Our kids typically come to school in many cases a year, 2 years behind their monolingual peers in other parts of the state and the country, and not really strong in either language. They don't have a strong language base to start from. So we have to find ways to accelerate that growth, to get them on pace, to be able to read and be able to move forward. And technology is a huge part of that. There are a lot of vendors out there that we use that have ESL type technologies that help us meet that goal. And so it absolutely a huge challenge for us.
And just as Dan, we're using some of those resources, but in addition, it's really helped us to do some professional development because our teachers now, who have a very busy day, can actually do online professional development and help them with some of those strategies, as well as then having students have 24/7 access because they can use those technologies at home as well as during the school day, which also helps with their families because they're helping their families develop those language skills as well.
That's great. I want to say thank you to both our guests. I really appreciate all the information you brought to us. Thank you.